Okay, first vote. First vote, vote. Okay, I think enough people got this one that I think I'm just going to go explain the answers here. So, which statements are true about implicit requirements? First, that they're often but not always derived from the explicit requirements. That is certainly true. We just saw a simple example where the explicit requirement really just talked about what a method should do, but it didn't talk about what happens when the method fails, or what are the ways in which it could fail and how do we handle those. So that's an example where we had to sort of derive some additional implicit requirements, even though they weren't part of what we wish the code would do, right? Usually when we think about what we wish the code would do, we tend to think in terms of what it would do when it works correctly, right? We tend to think about the happy path. Sometimes the implicit requirements come out of also considering what are the various sad paths. They apply only to unit and functional tests. Not necessarily. Implicit requirements can come from integration tests as well, or from user-level acceptance tests. In fact, the users tend to have the same issue, right? They tend to think of a flow in terms of the happy path, and often at each step there are many different ways that something could go wrong, and you need to have a sensible response when either the user makes an error or the user tries to do something that they thought would work but it doesn't work. So again, in those cases, you're really deriving these implicit requirements of, OK, well, what about when we're not on the happy path? What's a reasonable behavior to do then? And you have to test for those as well. And testing them is not really any lower priority, because the reaction when the user does something incorrect but expected is in some sense just as important as when they do something correct but expected, right? From the user's point of view, if they see a cryptic error message as opposed to seeing a helpful, oh, you tried to do X, but here's why you can't do X right now, you have to implement and test those code paths, because from the user's point of view, the app doesn't work if they don't understand how it failed, right? If they're not getting feedback about what they did wrong so that they could use it more effectively. So my view of the answer to this question is that the first statement is true. The second and third statements are, for the most part, not true, and that makes the fourth statement also not true.